she is. Hello.
Hi.
I may have to hold it so I can see.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, okay, do you flip it? All right, I need to flip the picture, okay. Okay, I'm getting better at this. I'm new to this, Kira.
IG Live is for me too. I've done a lot of Zoom, but not the IG Live.
So I am Rebecca Ebel here at Contemporary Art Matters, welcoming Kira Nam Greene to our first IG Live with our Summer Portraiture Show. And we open tonight, so you're getting a little preview of the exhibition. And I'm so happy to talk with you live. I want to do a little introduction. We can look at the paintings, and then I have lots of questions for you. And I guess people are welcome to submit questions, and we can do some live question and answers. So here we go. So I'm happy to present an exhibition of portraiture, especially today, because I think portraiture is a wonderful tradition, but it also is a reflection of who we are, who our, government, leadership, power is represented in history in portraits. And looking today at who we're painting, how we're representing them, what our families look like, what women look like, and the creative ways in which they're presented. But I was drawn to your work for many reasons, but I just love the way that you present women sort of staring boldly at you, being who they are, fully embracing themselves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's just a starting, and I'll walk around here in a second and show you a little bit of the exhibition. All right, so I'm going to swap over. So welcome to our gallery. So you're greeted by one of your paintings, and then we have works by Billy Sullivan, who's a New York painter. We have some beautiful paintings and pastels and ink drawings. And then in the gallery, we have Lisa McClimate is a Columbus artist who's represented with her beautiful paintings on panel, so you get the wood grain. But again, here is a beautiful family, a portrait of a family. I think families don't always look the same anymore today, but makes them no less loving and supportive and important in our communities. So these are friends of ours and my daughters. This is Linda Gall, who is a friend and painter, and these are all portraits of her granddaughter and her mother. So I love the way she sort of uses her watercolors and ink drawings to portray even sort of the insanity of our own families, But they're beautiful renderings. We have Jared Thorne, who's represented with photographs of his family. We have Laura Sanders, portrait of my daughter Sarah, and then Laura Larson. So you can see it's a big show, so I won't go too crazy. And then we have your beautiful paintings here. So there's a variety of techniques and approaches, but in many ways, I'm thrilled to start with you in this conversation because I think you really have an interesting approach to painting and to portraiture.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm going to back up into your background a little bit first because you are like super smart and super educated.
Didn't know what to do with myself, so kept going to school.
Yes, you did. So you have a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations from Seoul University, a PhD in Political Science from Stanford, a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from San Francisco Art Institute, and an MFA from the School of Visual Arts in New York. So this
Yes.
is not a slow path to coming to making paintings.
Yeah, it's a very roundabout way, and it's both cultural and economic, and you know, my status as kind of an immigrant as well, because I came to America to go to Stanford, and being in East Asia, especially in Korea, that you're expected to become a lawyer, doctor, or like professor. Those are the only choices. Like artist, no. Especially if you're doing well in school. So I was always interested in art, but I was never allowed to explore that avenue. And moving to America and like gaining kind of economic independence. But after school, I started working and gaining economic independence and like sort of like being in a society where the possibilities are like not circumscribed for women, and like the achievement is like defined not just by sort of like professional success in a certain level, that I started small, like just going to art school on weekend, like art classes on weekends, and then suddenly I said like I'm going to devote myself to art. This is what I always wanted to do. So I studied a little late.
Well, I think that th- what what I'm attracted to in your work is the complexity. So I think your background offers sort of a richness and deepness of ideas
Hmm.
and the way that you present these figures. Maybe you can talk about this painting because I don't think it's boring. I mean, I think not only technically the way you've rendered the image, but obviously you're presenting a whole host of ideas.
Right. I think the having had a like research background by doing PhD prepared me in a way to think about the approach to painting in a more like layered, nuanced way. And this painting, this is a friend of mine, young friend of mine, Kit. They are gender fluid personality. They're curator, artist, very active. And when I'm doing these portraiture, all the subject of my portraits are circle of friends and pretty good, you know, uh, people that I know that in the art world, and most of them are artists or architects, writers, mostly in creative field. And I invite them to my studio for preparatory photos and I ask them how they want to pose. And this is, I think this is a kind of a fundamental kind of question in contemporary portraiture, because there's sort of a collaborative process of how you're asking your subject how they want to present themselves, and you're giving them an agency in a way. So we came up with and I asked them also if they're with a art background, if they have favorite paintings, classical paintings that they want to mimic the gestures, because this is also a dilemma, how to pose oneself, how to present oneself is a kind of like a difficult and complicated question. So Kit said they wanted to mimic the pose from the Caravaggio's David and Goliath painting. So that's what the pose is based on. Um,
That's so
and
great. I mean, you do see that holding the head, but what is she holding here?
they're holding on Hermes designer bag that they will not bring it, but I added it. It's a designer, like very expensive designer handbag, but based on the
Oh, I see the label there.
yeah, so it's based on the Korean sack style called the furoshiki, which is furoshiki is a very beautiful open quilted piece of clothing, silk clothing that can be gift wrap or a bag or like cover things to cover food tables. So it's a multi-purpose piece of clothing. And this is very classically, very iconic Korean quilting tradition and very feminine object. And I was interested in this Western appropriation of the Asian culture and how that works. And because Kit is Korean American, as I am. And so we decided collaboratively to include a lot of the Korean elements like the crane, the jacket. Kit came wearing the jacket. Uh, and I just punched up the color and included melded the background and foreground with a similar motif, but the kind of like flip the negative and positive coloring scheme in the background and on clothing itself. And because Kit is very young, he's in their early 20s. We talked about instead of holding a sword as the weapon for the David in the ancient times, Kit is holding a selfie stick with a smartphone. So that's the generation's marker for power or independence. So
Or
I
weapon.
or weapon. I'm always looking for sort of iconic object that will fit the personality or the person that they are in the and that's kind of the inspiration comes from the lots of classical paintings, like especially Holbein's ambassador paintings, where there are all these like iconic object that denotes the education and the profession in the painting. So I wanted to give that kind of iconographic presentation on all my subjects in my paintings.
So in this next painting, um, we have two paintings of the same sitter,
Mm-hmm.
and here you've done a similar approach as with Kit, where the figure itself is not flushed out,
Mm-hmm.
but the clothing and the background sort of meld together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That has a really elegant approach. What does that mean for you?
I'm always interested in drawing, especially very classical, like the very delicate red chalk and brown chalk drawings. And I love the elegance and but the realism of those drawing. And I was interested in the kind of economy of the mark making and the complexity of the watercolors. And I also wanted to do a work on paper that present more like a painting rather than just like a, because works on paper sometimes is not treated as like a significant painting. So I wanted to do a work on paper mounted on a panel and in a large scale so that it's more read more like a painting. And another like art historical aspect that I'm really interested in is 1970s feminist art movement called the pattern and decorations. That's why you see a lot of patterns in my paintings, and the pattern and decoration movement just adapts a lot of the um, patterns and decoration that was considered low art, not fine art, and elevate them to a fine or high art position, and also going against the sort of the predominant art trend of the minimalism in the 70s and 60s. So the maximalist approach to more and like treating decorative not as a pejorative, but the more of a, like celebration of color and exuberance and life.
Well, you
So,
certainly see that in this painting. There are wonderful patterns and decorations.
mm-hmm,
And here the figure is fully rendered
mm-hmm,
in the sense there's flesh color. Um, and so fully present, if you
Hmm.
will. Uh, but
So
I
the
love the mix of patterns and cultures.
Yeah, that's another thing. The pattern is, for me, standing for culture. So all these sitters are presented with a very multicultural perspective of patterns from different cultures. The sitter Roya, her religious background is Baha'i. So that those mandala-like patterns that you see above her head is like a symbol for Baha'i religion, which is emphasize the peace and love, and uh, uh, also get inspired by the clothing. The fashion is another element that's very important in my paintings, because fashion is very related to the design and pattern as well. And Roya is very famous for wearing this like fabulous vintage clothing, and she wears that clothes on the street. It's not just that she especially wore that dress for me to paint her, but she wears them out on the street, and that's just kind of like New York Times did a profile on her like, fashion sense because of that, and so
So this is
and
what she wore to the grocery store that
she
day.
could, yes. So she's actually she's an actress, and she works at the restaurant at Odeon, and she's very she wears this every day she's at the restaurant, she's wearing something as fabulous as that dress, as a her public persona. And
I
her
love the way she sort of is very relaxed and confident and looks out at you with great ease.
mhm. So with this painting, we discussed what poses. Like she posed for me for many, many, very long time with different outfits. And with this particular pose, that we wanted to mimic the elegance of sergeant paintings, and this how sergeant painting ladies are very elegant but also powerful looking, and like I felt like that kind of will represent Roya. That's like a defines Roya. So that's and actually the when I'm doing these paintings, it's based on photos, but they are based on multiple photos, because it's rare, because I'm not a photographer. It's rare for me to be able to get a pose that's like perfect for me for from one photo. So I have like maybe 10 photos, and it's the amalgamation of like head is from one photo and like arm is from another photo. So this is a little bit of a like a human Photoshop.
So I notice here, so she's fully present, except her hand
Hmm.
sort of fades into the background, and
Hmm.
the objects around her are fully rendered, but her hand is left unpainted.
Hmm. So with all my very finished oil painting or mixed media painting. This painting is actually acrylic ink, color pencil, oil, gouache, and acrylic ink mixed in. And I like the sort of richness of combination of materials, and possibility of work on canvas can be not just acrylic or oil, but multitude of different media. And I like also show the degree of finishes and degree of like um, uh, different approach to painting. So, and by leaving hands unpainted, and there's also the flipping of background and foreground. The figure is the effect of figure going into the background and foreground is like more like accentuated because the hand is kind of melting away with the background, but also showing that how I start my painting with a very delicate, even on canvas drawings. And so there's a highly finished, very traditionally oil painting uh, uh, face to the preparatory sketch. So this, I wanted to show the kind of the, in a way, the process as well.
It's beautiful. So that brings us to another painting over here. where again you have sort of different degrees of of density or painting. You have the fully painted face of the sitter,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then the arm is invisible. We have no arms.
Mm-hmm. And I love how I love playing with the volume with the dress and the unfinished parts of the body, because the I love how pattern in dresses without rendering fully the dark and lightness of the or the modeling the pattern, the geometrical presentation of the pattern uh, uh, makes the volume of the body visible and very recognizable. So I kind of wanted to play with the emphasize that it's very flatly painted, but there is a volume. So that's another reason why like the arm is just a line drawing and almost fade into the background. And this particular painting is a painting on linen, and I love the color of linen, and I always like kind of like wondered why you have there's this beautiful linen colored canvas, and then you have to prime it in white. So I primed it in clear gesso so that linen color is fully present, and then I worked off of that beautiful linen canvas color.
It is really beautiful, and it does make for a really rich background
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
for the painting.
this particular portrait, Alice, she's a poet, and I just wanted to present her as a very contemplative, because and thoughtful person that she is, and wanted to paint her face as classically old mastery way as possible. So this painting it just focuses also because of the size focuses all on the face.
It does. I see
Mm-hmm.
that completely, and it does have a very classic pose, um, but with the choker necklace and the
Mm-hmm.
T-shirt pattern makes it more youthful and vibrant, with almost a whimsical flower
Mm-hmm.
child patterning that's on the surface that
Mm-hmm.
covers both the figure and the clothes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always kind of enjoy the how the background comes into the foreground. I mean, I think this is also approach Candy Wiley takes a lot, where the very ornate background wallpaper colors come in. But I kind of want to add another layer where they go back and forth. So there's a where the patterns meet. That's like some patterns come front, some patterns go backward, even in the overlapping section. And there's always a slight confusion of the background and foreground flipping back and forth. I think that's a very contemporary and approach to thinking about the three dimensionality of paintings.
Yes, you do see that, and I'm reminded by sort of, an early modernist masterwork, the Monet's Olympia, the way he rendered the flowers and the still life objects and painted the sheets in a
Mm-hmm.
way that was equal or surpassing the figure, sort of upending hierarchies. And a little bit you do that here with painting the birds in the background and leaving the sitter bare or unfinished in some way.
Yeah, and especially the pattern is like sort of a adaptation of a William Morris painting, Will, William Morris wallpaper. So it's a very flat, but then I made it more like three-dimensional in a way. And then by kind of merging with her skirt, that it becomes even more like a three-dimensional uh, in on the bottom of the painting. So I thought that was really interesting. And with this works on paper with the figure rendered as a kind of drawing, classical drawing. I wanted to strike a balance between there being patterns, but the also kind of the preserve the sort of a spareness of the drawing, the spirit of the drawing itself, because it is, essentially a drawing technique as well.
Well, thank you. So, I'm going to try to figure out if there are questions here. I'm new to reading these things. But I sort of am interested, going back to your background in political science and your different backgrounds. Obviously, there's a richness to the way you're presenting these that is, thoughtful and fits into an art history. And I'm sure I bring my own feminist agenda on how I read them. But
Mm-hmm.
maybe you could, I think there definitely are ideas that you're presenting here about what makes them 21st century, what makes them so contemporary.
I guess that it starts from the inspiration of how I arrived to start this series called this series of portraiture of women and or like gender fluid people. Started with the election of Trump, and as a student of political science, I've always been interested in the effectiveness of the collective action and the representation, and how people get together to form a powerful political group. And I think the biggest inspiration was the Women's March after Trump's election, how I saw the power of the collective action visibly manifested in Women's March, and I wanted to think about how that comes about, and and originally I thought about the how women are kind of like hidden driving force and a lot of the engine for a lot of activity, and almost like a tribal council of a lot of the organizations, but they've been ignored. And so I felt like making a group of portraitures of like a tribal council of women with a power, and power defined not by the money or political power, but something different. And that's where the series later was called Women in Possession of Good Fortune, from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, in the sense that the quote from the book is the man in possession of good fortune is surely in need of a wife, or something like that. So it's flipping that sentiment of marriage and money as the source of power to creativity, independence, and agency as the source of power. And I think that's sort of the ultimately what we're looking for in terms of political power in 21st century feminism. That the power is not just limited to, yes, political and economic power is important, but the acknowledgement of the other side of the creativity and self-representation and cultural agency is also important. I think that's what kind of started me in the series.
I love that. It's really beautiful. I mean,
Thank
that's
you.
probably why I respond so positively to your work. I also went to the Women's March, and that certainly was an experience that formed me and has activated me politically and in all aspects of my life. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I fully recognized through your work here the power, the symbolic power and real power of creative forces. So
Mm-hmm.
it's beautiful that you bring those forward, and very elegant work and sophisticated. And I think that's very striking in today's culture as well.
Thank you. I think it is challenging to work in figurative manner in this contemporary world, because it's like the challenge is like who you paint and how you represent those figures. And I think that's why there's like so much more, because of the focus has been more diversity and how to represent, like that's why I think there's like more interesting figurative work coming out more recently. And I think that I kind of am very happy to be able to contribute in that dialogue as well.
Well, our opening is tonight. I wish you were here, but it
I
looks
know,
like
me
you're
too.
in a great place now. Where are you? Where are we finding?
I'm in Catskills for the summer, so you're seeing the mountain in the background.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
because you teach, right? Are you going back to teaching this fall?
Not sure because of the COVID, and the Parsons has not still have not issued the appointment letters. So it's like
It's a
everything is because, yeah. So
Well, I want to thank you. Thanks for the great chat. I love It's our first foray into Instagram Live with our exhibition, and I look forward to welcoming people in to see them in person. They're really deliver, and they're elegant and gorgeous. So, and I'm also looking forward to commissioning a portrait. So we've got a couple of ideas. So if you're interested, let's continue that conversation.
sure, yeah. So thank you so much, and it was really fun, and thank you for asking me all these amazing questions. It was
Well,
hard, but
hour, but I don't know how much people want to hear me talk or listen. We'll keep it brief, keep you wanting more, and maybe we'll revisit this. We'll do a studio visit in the future. We'll come up
oh,
and.
great.
All right. Well, it's great seeing you, and
Good
I
to
look
see
forward to
you.
seeing you soon.
Yeah, me too. And the show looks amazing. I love how you brought all this like diverse approach to the portraiture, and it looks amazing. So thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
I think there are a lot of important voices, and I feel so honored to, work with so many interesting and brilliant people such as yourself. So.
Thank you.
Well done. Recoup, get the fresh air, and then back to your studio.
Yes. All right. Bye.
Bye.